Former Secretary of Defense Bill Cohen. Mr. Secretary, great to see you as always. Let's start with your reaction. I was just asking Matthew Chance, is it all that much of a surprise that Russia was able to confirm that Yevgeny Prigozhin did in fact die in that plane that went down? Your thoughts?
Jim, could I just say something first about how sorry I am for the loss of life on the Osprey and the people who are still injured,
absolutely.
and some of them quite seriously. My heart goes out to their families, as it does to the families who are about to have a vigil for a neo-Nazi white supremacist killing young black people. The juxtaposition of men who are training to go and protect freedom for people the world over, and have somebody domestically kill people who are trying to enjoy freedom. Now, to get to the issue of Prigozhin, I think he was either I'd say a fool or a fatalist. But he had to know that he was in deep trouble. He called Putin a liar. Putin called him a traitor. He may be the only person on the planet who didn't see Godfather 2, where Michael Corleone is taking out Fredo with a big kiss. And I suspect that's what happened when he went to the Kremlin, that Putin embraced him and may have given that fatal kiss. And Prigozhin thought all things were made up at that point. I kind of doubt it. I think he knew that he was keeping on the move as much as he could because he was a marked man and was going to meet this kind of an end.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to go down as one of life's great mysteries, Mr. Secretary, that, why Prigozhin thought if he were to just stop that march to Moscow that all would be forgiven by Putin. It boggles the mind why he thought his days were not numbered at that point.
Well, there's the other issue in terms of the Kremlin or Putin's office now saying that I know nothing. I did nothing. I had nothing to do with this plane going down. It's almost what Michael Cohen was saying about his former boss. Doesn't have to say anything, just indicate what he wants done. It's something out of Thomas Becket, the Archbishop who was murdered, assassinated. When he asked, when Henry II asked, who will rid me of this meddlesome priest? In this case, this meddlesome mercenary. All he has to do, ask it. And there will people who will carry it out, and he can step back and say, I only asked a question. I didn't tell them to do anything. I had nothing to do with this. So I think it's pretty clear when you look at the probabilities given Putin's history of taking out enemies. And this was an enemy, as far as he was concerned, who backstabbed him and was a traitor. So I think the footprints of guilt will be traced back to the Kremlin, no matter what they say. And I think people will understand, even though Putin is enjoying saying, I had nothing to do, this is all part of some other plan, not mine. People in Russia understand this is what he does.
And there's been a lot of speculation on what brought down the plane. U.S. intelligence says there's a number of possibilities that are being evaluated, including an on-air explosion. Based on your experience being over at the Pentagon, do you think that they'll eventually have a sense as to what took place, despite what the Kremlin is saying?
I don't think we'll ever know, because I don't think the Kremlin will ever give us the evidence that is real. Remember, they were responsible for the Malaysian commercial airline being taken down. They never allowed international inspectors to see what was the cause of that crash. Here, they're not allowing anybody to see what's going on or analyzing what could have taken. It could have been a crimped fuel line. It could have been foul fuel going through the lines. It could have been a drone fired by a Russian or a Ukrainian. It could have been a malfunction. It could have been a bunch of birds flying into the jet engines. All of that is possible, but what's more probable and more likely is how many people have been chucked out of windows in Russia? How many people have died with a bullet in their head going across the bridge in Moscow? How many people have been put in prison for 10 years for saying this is a war going on in Ukraine? So when you start looking at probabilities as opposed to possibilities, the probability very clear to me. The footprints are traced by the searchlight of probability right back to the Kremlin.
And Mr. Secretary, yesterday I spoke with retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, and he was saying that it's possible that Prigozhin's death could somehow take some pressure off of Putin. and that potentially could lead the Russians in the direction of maybe wanting to negotiate peace. I guess making the case that because Putin doesn't have as much pressure coming from his right flank, that sort of thing, that maybe Putin might be more in a mood to negotiate, or might be in a better position to negotiate from a domestic political standpoint. What do you think? Or is Putin really just in a position now where he can drive a hard bargain with the Ukrainians, and he's just going to continue to prosecute this war the way we've seen it prosecuted so far, in a brutal, brutal fashion?
You know, the question's been raised, is Putin strengthened by eliminating Prigozhin, or is he weakened? Well, he is strengthened to some extent, but he starts from a lower base. He was weakened by the sight of Russian soldiers being wiped out by the Ukrainians. He was weakened by the sight of his generals being killed on the front line. He was weakened by seeing the Ukrainians take the fight to his people. And then Prigozhin comes in and participates, and you have Bakhmut. And so Prigozhin becomes a hero, making Putin look even weaker. So the fact that Prigozhin's gone now, he gets strengthened, but only to the level he was before Prigozhin came. So it's a temporary strengthening. And secondly, when you think about Putin, it's sort of looking like bodybuilders who get pumped up by steroids and they look very strong, but they have a fatal heart defect. So what the appearance was for Russia, they were big and they were 10 feet tall. When we saw them in action, they really were very small. They were 6 feet or less. And so I think that Putin may be strengthened, but only to the extent that he was even strong before. He actually was very weak before. He's back to being as weak as he was the time he went into Ukraine. So I don't know if that gives him more opportunity to seek for a solution, but I suspect the only way he'll come to the negotiating table if more Russian soldiers keep coming home in body bags. That will put him to the bargaining table. I don't think anything else will.
All right, Secretary Bill Cohen, thanks so much. As always, greatly appreciate the insights. Good to see you again. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jim.